Alright, so we're back here with the 550, and I wanted to talk about what kind of issues I had when I first dropped the motor in and tried to start it for the first time. So kind of what happened was I put it all together, put it on the flush kit, started it, and the second I would start it, it would rev all the way up, and so it was pretty obvious it was running away. So I did not pressure test it when I first built it, which I should have, but they didn't really have like a kit that anyone was making to make for the plates and the rubber, like the gasket material, to actually pressure test it. And I didn't feel like making my own, so I just threw it together. I assumed it was fine because I didn't cut any corners or anything with the parts or assembly. And of course it runs away on me, and it was pretty obvious that was the problem. So I pulled it back in here assuming it was going to be a leak in the case or at the the base gasket, or I was assuming it was probably going to be a terrible situation, or the crank seals, the one behind the flywheel, maybe, I didn't know. So first thing I did was I made up some block off plates for it, and I got my gasket material. So you can get pretty much anything. I just got like a thick rubber. You can get a shower curtain, one of those big huge balloons, basically anything. If you have a half pipe like this, or even if you have a stock pipe, all you really have to do is throw the material in here and then sandwich it so that it's all blocked off, and then you just tighten it down so that's that block off for this plate. And then over here, all you have to do is take the carbs off, take your whatever material you chose to have, or whatever kind of rubber, it doesn't matter, like I said, just something that's not porous, and you cut just a square I did with 2 holes in it, slap it on top. You can either put the carb back on. I didn't do that because I've got 2 of them, and it's like really hard to tighten them on and get it all together. So I instead I just got like this flat stock here, which is actually, shouldn't have probably left that on the ground because it's getting a little rusty, but I just got flat stock like this, and I cut it down, and then I cut 2 holes in it and threw that on top, tightened it down with the stock hardware, and everything seemed to check out well for that. So then you need your gauge. So you can make pretty much anything with a pressure gauge on it, and you hook that up to the pulse line right here. I just used a double barbed fitting for this size line, put one end in here, and then got the same size line, plugged that into the gauge, and I would just get like a gauge and put it onto a T with 2 ends where you can slide some hose on it, hose clamp it, and then just get an adapter where you can thread it onto a gun for an air compressor, or put it onto a Schrader valve for a bike pump, which is the safer option, so you know you're not going to overpressurize it. So make your little gauge, and then you just put 10 psi of air into it, and then if you lose air over 10 minutes, wait, and if you lose more than half the air in 10 minutes, it's probably got something. Especially if it loses it all right away, you know you've got a huge leak. Mine would leak down to nothing over about 2 minutes when I had my leak. So it was a fairly good sized leak because it would run away immediately. It wasn't building up. It had no problem getting the air it needed. So I'd say if you're losing air, all your air faster than 5 minutes, you've got a good sized leak and definitely should be looked into. When I fixed my leak, it would leak down over about 5 minutes, and it would lose about 7 psi, and then it would just hold 3 psi. So I'm assuming that somewhere there was a little bit of a leak with the pressure against the gaskets and stuff. And once it leaked down to a small amount of pressure, it wouldn't leak out. It wouldn't be able to get through. I don't know. It seemed reasonable to me, so I threw it back together, and it works just fine now. But luckily, when I did my leak down test on this manifold, the studs in the front they're actually tapped all the way through into the manifold, so it was getting all of its air that it needed through those studs that were leaking. So what I did to fix that, like at first I thought it was the gasket material, so I switched that and then I tightened it down more. I didn't know why it was leaking out of these two holes, and then I realized that the studs were tapped all the way through. So they were like a little bit loose too in the holes, so it could just leak through the threads and get all the air out of the threads. So when you pressurize it, all you do is take like a spray bottle like this, throw some soapy water in there, and then wherever it bubbles, that's where you've got your leak. So I had it bubbling out of these two holes, so I pulled them out. I put the 1211, or first to test, I put the Teflon tape for sealing threads, put them back in, and then it like pretty much, or it stopped leaking. And so as a more permanent solution, I took those out, took the tape off of them, and then rolled the threads in the 1211 3-bond, like the liquid gasket that I used on the cases, and then threaded them back in, wiped everything off, and then let them sit, and that seemed to be the solution. So if you have a West Coast style manifold like that and you have a problem with running away, that's more than likely your problem, because the studs are tapped all the way through into the manifold. So I sealed that up, put the carbs on, and it's been running just fine ever since. So hopefully that holds up, and that's really it for the pressure testing. So you can make a set of or a set of plates and block offs pretty cheap. So I would just take care of that right away, just so you make sure that it's not any of your crank seals or your case or anything like that, where you'll have to pull it back out of the ski and split the cases and stuff, and that's a lot of extra work. So when you first build it, just pressure test it. It was probably like $20 to get everything that I needed to pressure test it, and then it's just some peace of mind. So that's it for now.